is up, YouTube? I'm the Poké-Chap, and Merry Christmas to all of you. As my gift to all of you, I've decided to start off a brand new segment I'm calling the Battle Lounge. Now, I'm sure you're asking yourself, what is the Battle Lounge? Good question, nondescript viewer. The Battle Lounge is going to be a brand new segment in which I analyze and come up with a hypothetical example of a set team, more as an outline than an actual, this is the best example of that team possible. Now, since this is the holiday season, I've decided to go with the most accurate and appropriate one I could think of. MonoIce. Now, I'm sure you guys are asking yourself, what's a MonoIce team? Again, excellent question, faceless viewer, I don't know who is. A mono team is basically a gym team in which it's a team constructed around a singular primary type as the face of the entire team. Now, this team can, as it implies, be of any type. However, as long as all Pokemon in it share a singular type, in this case, Ice, then it is considered perfectly legal. In case it wasn't obvious, such teams have difficulties associated with making them, which does make construction of them pretty enjoyable, and why I wanted to cover this. I've made mono teams before in the past, and to me they're just some of the most enjoyable things to create. So, without any further ado, let's go into what goes into making the quote-unquote perfect MonoIce team. Now, when constructing a mono team, the first thing you gotta do is look at what is the strengths and weaknesses of the type you are building around. In this case, Ice, it's pretty 50-50 on this one, in that there are 4 types that Ice is really good against, and 4 types that can kinda kick it to the curb. The 4 types it's really good against are Dragon, Flying, Grass, and Ground, while on the other hand, it takes heavy damage from Fire, Fighting, Rock, and Steel. Now, while it is good to know what this team is strong against, it is equally as important to remember what can destroy it, as that is the single thing you need to be able to build around. If you don't have outs to your weaknesses, then one well-placed Pokemon will destroy your entire team, since even if you have a secondary typing that mitigates a weakness, it's still going to hit for neutral damage at worst. So you do need to plan around that accordingly. And some Pokemon that you have may not necessarily be terribly effective against their weaknesses. Some may even be exceptionally weak to said weaknesses, as we will see later on. However, that's just something I really need you guys to bear in mind. For right now, we're going to go into the format of how exactly you're supposed to construct these teams. And again, this isn't a set, this is how you build competitive teams. This is more along the lines of, this is a good starting point for building a team, just to make sure you got some set positions on your team covered. These positions that I like to utilize are the opener, or the Pokemon that goes out first in a team, a physical attacker, a physical defender, a special attacker, a special defender, and what I'm going to call other. Now, all other is just some nondescript position that either covers a weakness or fills some other unique role within a team that doesn't necessarily fit into any of the other 5 categories. I'll get more into what the other is like when I get to what this team's other is going to be. But for now, we're going to start at the beginning with the opener. Now, before I dive right into who our opener is going to be, I feel it's important to discuss what the purpose of an opener is. An opener's ultimate job is to either set up for your team or to set up a disruption for the other team, something to give you some sort of an inherent advantage or your opponent an inherent disadvantage so that you are better off in the battle. And in this case, our opener happens to be able to accomplish both. Our opener for our MonoIce team is going to be Alolan Ninetales. Now, there's a few reasons why I chose Alolan Ninetales. First, that pesky fighting weakness I mentioned earlier, it only receives neutral damage towards. However, that's not going to go very far because Alolan Ninetales is kinda brittle. That being said, it is fast, which is good because it can set up what we need. First, it has the ability Snow Warning, which, even as far as Ice types go, is not a common ability. There's only a few other Pokemon that can even have it, some of which have it as a hidden ability, one of which isn't even easily accessible. So, the real question becomes, why Alolan Ninetales? I could have gone with Abomasnow or Vanillux if I really wanted to, but I feel like Alolan Ninetales, on top of having its speed, brings something else to the table, as it is the only Snow Warning user to also have access to another move that was introduced in Generation 7, and that move is Aurora Veil. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of Aurora Veil because it's such an underused move, Aurora Veil is essentially the combination of Reflect and Light Screen, buffing both physical and special defense for your entire team, cutting the damage in half. However, it can only be used while Hail is in effect. But the good news is, it doesn't need Hail to stay active, it just needs Hail to start. So, Alolan Ninetales goes out first turn, Snow Warning kicks in, boom, you got your Hail. And if your Alolan Ninetales happens to be holding a Light Clay, then guess what? Aurora Veil will last for a whopping 8 turns, an extra 3 turns longer than that Hail is going to last. So that means that not only is your opponent's team taking damage, unless they have Ice types themselves or Overcoat, then you don't have to worry about your Pokemon taking any damage on top of that. It's a nice little combination of things, plus with it being part Fairy type, it does kind of help it out with a little bit of type diversity. That being said, it is times 4 weak to Steel because of that, and gains the Poison weakness in exchange for that Fighting weakness it loses. But overall, I would have to say that Alolan Ninetales on that premise alone does bring plenty to the table, at the very least as an opener. Now, swapping back into it is extremely risky because, as mentioned, Alolan Ninetales is brittle, so if you need to get your Aurora Veil or Hail back up, just bear that in mind before throwing it into the danger zone. So, now that we have our opener filled, it's time to move down the list and go to our physical attacker. Now, there are a few good physical attacking Ice-type Pokemon. However, there is one in particular I decided to go with because, again, it helps counter our weaknesses better than certain other ones, like, say, Weavile, who are literally walking ice shards that, while hurt, can't really take hits to save their life. The Pokemon I have chosen is big, bulky, and hits just as hard as it can take a hit, and that is Mamoswine. Now, in regards to why Mamoswine is such an effective Pokemon, you need look no further than his hidden ability, Thick Fat. Remember how one of those weaknesses with that ever-pesky fire type that is commonly seen on a lot of competitive teams? Well, guess what makes it hit neutral? And guess who has a boatload of health to make sure that that's barely going to do anything as it earthquakes your silly little fire type half to death. Oh, and in case you're worried about Mamoswine being too slow to effectively do anything, it can learn Ice Shard, so it has priority and I don't want to hear it. Now, while Mamoswine is capable of bringing a lot of hurt and being able to take a good amount of hits, it is far from our physical defensive Pokemon that we would like it to be. So, in order to compensate for that, we have our physical defender, Alolan Sandslash. A lot of Alolan representation here today, don't we? Now, the thing about Alolan Sandslash is that it is kind of a double-edged sword in the regard of being a good physical defender. It has the amazing defensive typing of Steel, which helps mitigate its lousy defensive typing of Ice. However, even with its blistering 120 base defense, it boasts 2 times 4 weaknesses in the form of Fighting and Fire. That being said, Rock and Steel go back down to being times 1 effective, and it does unfortunately gain a weakness to Ground. That being said, Alolan Sandslash can help counter a good number of things with its Steel typing, because again, it has a good number of resistances coming up at 8, some of which are fairly common typings. In addition to that, it also gains some pretty good moves, like Gyro Ball, especially considering how slow it is, and even Knockoff, which is a very helpful move to have in most competitive teams that no one else on our team so far has access to. Now, that being said, that Fire and Fighting weakness does make it kind of a problem, considering there's quite a few Fire Fighting types alone, let alone the ones that only have access to those specific types. So, we've already addressed our Fire weakness with Mamoswine. I think it's time we go ahead and address the big issue that we've been having with Fighting. But Poké-Chap, we have Ninetales, and Alolan Ninetales gets hit neutral by Fighting. Yes, it does get hit neutral by Fighting, but as mentioned, it's brittle and not something you want to send out against a Mach Punch regardless. Now, when dealing with these specific weaknesses, normally the best you can hope for is neutral damage. However, we have access to one Pokemon that is actually able to completely eliminate the fighting type weakness inherent in ice types, which is extremely rare since only a few types can even have this set immunity to it, because they need a Pokemon with the secondary typing to do so, and Ice is lucky enough to have been blessed with Frostlass. Representing our special attacker, Frostlass has a lot of utility in it, and its greatest asset is the fact that it is immune to the fighting type. So, if you find yourself face to face with a Machamp, guess what? You can just swap out with that incoming Focus Blast and be fine. Now, that being said, there are a few other problems that Frostlass has. First of all, despite the fact that I said it's our special attacker, that's really only because of its move pool loaning itself to a special attacker way more than does a physical attacker. Neither of its attack stats are terribly amazing. What it does have in abundance is speed and hilarious utility moves, which is good considering the aforementioned fighting type that is such a problem usually has access to rock type moves such as Stone Edge or Rock Slide. So, in order to be able to properly counter that, we have Frostlass with a ton of silly moves at its disposal that can help just infuriate any fighting type opponent, such as Will-O-Wisp to help neuter its attack further than the Aura Veil is already doing, Confuse Ray in order to help it punch its stupid face in, and, if you get really desperate, Destiny Bond to help take out any problem Pokemon before they truly become a problem. And even if you do decide to utilize all three of those, you still have room for a Blizzard, which will hit 100% accuracy, assuming that Hail is still in effect. Plus, it gets a myriad of other crazy things like Draining Kiss, Thunderbolt, and obviously ghost moves like Shadow Ball. But overall, this Pokemon does have a lot of really good potential. It's really about how you use it. Ghost types can be kind of weird, but in this case, the ghost typing is really just more for that immunity to fighting, and Frostlass does an excellent job of providing us with that solution to the problem. Now we move on to our special defender, a Pokemon who need no introduction, and is one of the most feared and foreboding of all the ice types. Behold, the magnum opus of ice, Cryogonal. Okay, before you guys all close out of the video because I said something mind-bogglingly stupid, hear me out on this one. I do have a good reason for putting Cryogonal on this team. Now, while Cryogonal is the only pure ice type on this list, meaning it does not have any reprieve from any of its weaknesses, it does have an amazingly high special defense stat, which is essentially why it's there. However, it does have a utility of other moves at its disposal that does make it kinda sort of almost worthwhile. It has access to a move that helps address an issue I haven't talked about so far, Stealth Rocks. As is the case with any typing that is weak to rock, Stealth Rocks can be the literal and metaphorical final nail in the coffin for them. So Cryogonal is able to bring with it Rapid Spin, something that no other member of this team, I'm not even sure if Lowland Sandslash has it to be completely honest, in order to help address that major issue. And I know what you guys are thinking, but if we send it out on that, it's just going to lose health and it's not going to survive. Why would I do that? Because it also has Recover, so it can just heal back any of the damage it would take upon entry. And again, as long as it's out against the right sort of special attacker, it can live. It has really good special defense. Again, in addition to that Aurora Veil, which I'm pretty sure Cryogonal can also learn. In addition, it also has access to one of the best Ice-type moves in my opinion, Freeze Dry. Freeze Dry has the unique ability of being able to be super effective against water types as well, which is something that we haven't been able to address so far with this team. Admittedly, water types are not usually a problem for ice types, but still, it's nice being able to have a move with enhanced utility in it. And if you're feeling really crazy about it, you can also throw Ancient Power on this thing with the hopes of getting some good buffs and having some nice rock coverage for them pesky fire types. Now, with all that said and done, we finally get to the last position on this team, the Other. Now, the only reason that this Pokemon truly is an Other is because of the last little bit of protection it offers from all of its weaknesses, and because none of its stats really loan itself to any one particular field, so it more just kinda got there because it really is the Other. That being said, that does not mean that this final Pokemon is any less invaluable to this team, because truly, Lapras is a very powerful Pokemon. So, for anyone who has never used this Pokemon before, I'm sure you're asking yourself, why Lapras? It's a water type. Well, first of all, you ignorant hick, it's actually a water ice type, so it is fully applicable, because when Gen 1 was creating its ice types, it didn't really know what it was doing, so it just found a couple of aquatic things and Jinx and just slapped the ice type on it, because why not? However, that does still work out very well for it, because it has some amazing abilities to go with it, like water absorb and hydration, and it also, given its dual typing, receives neutral damage from steel and fire. While it does still take regular damage from rock and fighting, rock types probably aren't going to be going out against a Lapras when it can just scald or hydro pump them and be on its merry way. In addition, while I mentioned Lapras doesn't have a whole lot in the ways of any one specific stat, it does have a lot of HP. And the rest of its stats are actually, while average, not bad average. The only stat it really has that's lacking is speed, and even then, it's far from a problem, since this thing is plenty bulky as it is and can be either a physical or special attacker, physical defender, generic defender. It can be whatever you need it to be, which is why it's in Other. However, the main reason I have this thing here is because of, like Frostless, the immense utility it has access to. It has the ability to learn crazy moves such as Sing, Confuse Ray, Ice Shard, Paris Song, Ice Beam, Brine, Scald, and, if you recall from our last entry, Freeze Dry via breeding. That means this thing, if it has something like, I don't know, Water Absorb, it could be the perfect means of taking out any sort of pesky water types, since, believe it or not, there are a lot of water types, and they are all capable of learning other moves that can be problematic for ice types, given the wide variety of them that there are. In addition to that, this Pokemon, as mentioned, does just have a lot of crazy moves attached to it and can be used for just about anything because it is in such a diverse series of egg groups. It would be almost foolish not to include Lapras on here. As I mentioned, most of this list is just a random example of things that could be used to fill certain roles. However, I feel like on any Mono-Ice team, Lapras is almost a must because of what it has to bring to the table. And there you have it. This is what I'm calling my current Mono-Ice team build. Again, I'm not saying that this is the best ice team out there. I'm not saying if you get these guys and do what I said with them, what little I said with them, that you will be the most powerful ice type trainer out there. However, they demonstrate everything that you need to do for a proper mono build, which is analyzing your weaknesses and working around them so that those weaknesses become far less prevalent throughout the team. It's impossible to escape them entirely, but this team does an excellent job of mitigating those weaknesses and reducing them as much as is humanly possible. If you guys decide to go through and build your own mono team, then you can add your own little flair to it. Maybe you would pick Weavile instead of Mamoswine. Maybe you would have a different Pokemon for Other. Maybe you would choose a actual good special defender other than Cryogonal. I'm sorry, dude, I want to like you, and you are a beautiful little snowflake, but you do kind of suck. But regardless, if you guys have your own ideas for a mono build, specifically ice type in this case, let me know down in the comments what you guys would do for it. I would like to hear it, because to me, mono types are one of the most fun builds out there. Yeah, they can be a little wonky, but that's part of the fun, is figuring out how to work around your weaknesses and still make a powerful team. And if you guys would like to see me do another team like this, let me know. I would love to go through all of the different typings and maybe even a couple of other theme possibilities to just spruce it up a little bit. Let me know what type you guys like to see next down below, or any other themes that you have. And until next time, Merry Christmas and peace.